This is a ManeHustle Media podcast.
Yo, this is Rashani from the Single Simulcast. And when I'm not making you laugh or making up parody songs, I'm kicking back, listening to Militantly Mixed.
Hi, and welcome to Militantly Mixed, the podcast about race and identity from the mixed race perspective. I am your host, Sharmane, aka Mixed Girl Mane, and I'm really excited, as always. I'm really excited about my guest this week, and I can't wait for you to get a chance to listen to this episode. But this has been kind of a heavy week, and I want to take a few minutes out of my intro to talk about that heaviness, even though it doesn't necessarily relate to mixed raceness. And then we'll go into the more positive stuff and the awesome interview that we have coming forward. This last week was pretty crazy. Here in the United States, if you're listening from the United States, as you know, we confirmed a Supreme Court justice to the bench that is highly unqualified for the position. Maybe not in the legal sense in terms of knowledge and everything like that, although I can't say for sure. I don't know enough about him outside of that. But in terms of temperament and, him being a sexual assaulter, potentially a rapist, this is not the best time. For those of you that listen who are not from the States, I'm sure you're probably well aware, because everybody else in the world tends to be far more aware of America than Americans are of other countries, unfortunately. We're not doing great out here, guys. We have an administration that is extremely problematic, a very anti-American, very anti the people, and that administration is bringing forth their cohorts that are on very dangerous positions. I'm a liberal person. I would say I'm pretty far on the liberal side, but I believe in moderates. I think that in our highest positions in the country, our Supreme Court, our presidency, our et cetera, that these should be very moderately minded people, because moderate would cover more of the population. You'd be taking care of more of the people. Of course, I would prefer a left lean, just because the left does have a platform that considers the people more than the conservative side. But I do believe in moderates, and what we, in particular on our Supreme Court, and what we do not have right now is moderates, not enough. We have a very dangerous new Supreme Court justice who is certainly a sexual assaulter from what we saw displayed last week, but possibly also a rapist from the other stories we haven't got a chance to hear directly yet, just the small bits of the accusations. He also is very rash, unable to keep his emotions in check. These are dangerous positions dangerous behaviors to have on the bench, and it's a bad time. I am also victim, survivor. I'm not sure what the best term is. Either way, the words don't feel good. Of sexual assault, I was raped as young as 12. I have also been assaulted younger, depending on how we view assault. I was raped again at 21. I've had countless amount of different sort of harassment, including in the workplace, assault in school, assault in my family. So this week is extra traumatizing, because not only do I have to listen to a woman with as moderate of emotion as she could convey her sexual assault experience with Justice Kavanaugh, I needed to, as an American citizen, I needed to listen to that. I needed to be a part of, I needed to listen to the hearings and know what the direction my country was going into. But as a victim or a survivor, whatever you want to say, of sexual assault, it was very traumatizing to listen to her story. It was very traumatizing to listen to his rebuttal. It is very traumatizing for the constant stream in social media and the new and regular media, what was happening in the world between Cosby and Kavanaugh and all of the other assaulters that are out there in the world, in the public eye right now. It is re-traumatizing to those of us who have suffered these kinds of experiences. And so I want to take this time out to just briefly mention all of what I've said so far, to say that for those of you like me who are sufferers or victims, however you want to call it, if you do not have people in your life that are helping you and supporting you through this time, that are recognizing that hearing the stories of others could be very traumatizing or re-traumatizing and can bring up stuff that you're probably trying to tamp down on a regular basis, like we all do, then I will offer that service to you. I feel that it is important to be a community in so many different ways. Obviously, as a mixed race person, because I'm putting together a mixed race podcast, I wanted that community. As a woman of color, I think that we aren't a part of the conversation of womanhood in America as much as we should be. And therefore, as a woman of color, I want to have a community. And I mean, obviously, this is not something I would want to be a community about, but because I have this experience, I need to have that community as well of other victims or survivors who share this experience and can support each other in a way that only people who have had that experience can. So if you do not have that support system in your meat space life, then you can reach out to me in your cyberspace life and have an ear, a person to listen to. And it's not an empty suggestion or anything like that. You can reach out to me through all of the social media platforms that we have, through Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, email, or our phone number at Militantly Mix on all platforms. Email Sharmane at Militantly Mix, S as in Sam, H-A-R, M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, E. And through our phone, our Skype phone number, 323-545-6001. And even if you do have the support system, but you kind of have something that you need to be anonymous, I completely understand that. That's sometimes more helpful. That's why I go to therapy, because I need someone who's not in my life to know some of the things that I'm suffering from. If you can't afford that out in the world, but you still need it, go ahead and reach out. It only goes to me. I say we a lot, but I am Militantly Mixed and I am ManeHustle Media. It is just me at a desk in my living room. And if you need that support, I will be here to offer that support. I know it's tough and we don't always have people when we need them. And through this podcast, I have met people that I am cultivating friendships with that I can tell will eventually be extremely meaningful friendships. And we all go through things, whether it's through our mixed raceness or through our sexual identities or things that have happened to us in the past, and we need people. And so this is my form of activism. I'm not really a marcher or a in-person protester. I feel like I would like to be, but it's just not really my comfort zone because of different anxieties and whatnot, even perhaps laziness. But here's my activism. If you need a support system and you don't have it, call me, email me, tweet at me, whatever. And I will try to be that support system to the best of my ability and spread it around. I think that is the form of activism that I can do through my show or through me as a person. It won't be recorded or anything like that. I won't do anything like that to you. But I feel that I need to put that out there. It's just been kind of weighing pretty heavily on me given our current climate. So, all right. Now, if I can get out of this mindset to try to get happy about the rest of the show, let's get into sort of the logistics of having Militantly Mixed. As you know, we are a fan-sponsored podcast, and through Patreon and through PayPal, you can donate to help us keep going and growing. Through PayPal, if you want to just hit us with a one-time donation, anything can be helpful. You can donate as low as $1 to as high as anything you wish at paypal.me/militantlymix. And on patreon.com/militantlymix, you can sponsor us on a monthly basis. Again, as low as $1 a month to as high as anything you wish. Although there are tiers, reward level tiers up to certain levels. I don't have high echelon donations because I don't anticipate that anytime soon or probably ever. But yeah, there's different reward levels starting at $1 all the way up to, I think I had $25 or $50 is my highest. Buttons and mugs and t-shirts and things like that and more things will come down the pipe as we get more sponsorship. We'll be able to afford it more. You'll get access to early or exclusive content for just the Patreon sponsors. An example of that is the DNA episode from last week was available to our Patreon sponsors for about a month before I released it to the public. So there are some benefits there. They're not as many as I would like to do right now, but as we get more sponsorship, I'll be able to afford to be able to do those extra content pieces, including incorporating video, which I know I've been threatening for a few weeks, but just trying to get it all sorted out. There's a number of podcasts that I listen to that are jumping into the video side, and I've been really inspired by them. Shout out to Gerald from By Black Podcast. He's doing big things on his show and on video and Facebook Live and stuff like that. So he's an inspiration and a great support system for Black podcasts. So yeah, with their sponsorship, this kind of stuff will end up developing a little bit faster, and you'll get that extra content. But it really does help. As of last week, we got enough sponsorship to cover our hosting fees for our audio files for the podcast, which is allowing you to listen to the show as we speak, which is a huge relief given my current financial situation. I know that even if everything else falls apart, I know that we can at least pay for the hosting of the show each month. I don't lack any content. I have several interviews banked. I have weeks and weeks. I'm well into probably January or February of 2019 worth of interviews that you haven't even got a chance to hear from, some dating back to June, all the way to quite a few that I've done this month as well. So the content's not going anywhere. It's there for you guys. We just release once a week. That's the only problem. But for now, we're a once a week podcast. We have tons of content to give to you. We just need the sponsorship to keep us going. All right. So that's enough of that. I always feel weird having to do that, but trying to turn my side hustle into my main hustle, folks. All right. Continue to follow us on social media and reach out to us. I love that I get as much contact as I do through social media for Militantly Mixed. It doesn't happen as much on the other show, Militantly Mixed, the Black as Fuck edition, but I get a lot of interaction through Militantly Mixed, and I love it. Keep telling me your stories. If you want to come on the show, come on the show. We'll put your story out there. Don't think that your story is too small for the show, because everything that you have to say about your experience will affect it'll affect somebody out in the world. Trust me, almost every episode I get somebody who sends me a tweet or an email that says that episode resonated with me because XYZ. So get at me and let me know how you're feeling about the show. If there's a particular kind of content you want to hear that you haven't heard yet, you hit me up with that as well. If you have a story or know of a story, hit me up as well. On Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Militantly Mixed. Email Sharmane at militantlymix.com. Don't forget to spell my name right. S as in Sam, H-A-R, M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, E at militantlymix.com. Or you can hit us up on our Skype phone number, 323-545-6001. Hit us with a voicemail and I'll get back to you if it's something that you want to contact directly with me. Or you can drop a little promo for the show. You can say that you listen to Militantly Mix and what you like about it, and I'll throw it on the show. Yeah, get at us. Let us know what's going on. I love the interaction. It keeps me feeling like, we're on the right track with this, and I really enjoy it. And I'm the one that reaches out to you. I'm the one. I know I say we a lot, like in the royal sense. I am a quarter British, so we is me. I am ManeHustle Media. I am Militant Mix. I'm the one sitting in a desk in my living room in my tiny little apartment in Los Angeles pulling this off. So, all right. I think that's enough of all that stuff. I am excited about this guest. My guest this week is Sonia Smith-Kang of Mixed Up Clothing. This woman is what I like to call professionally mixed race, which is what I'm trying to do. She runs a business called Mixed Up Clothing, which creates clothing that mixes and matches fabrics from places all over the world to styles from cultures all over the world. So you might have an Asian style top with a South American print, or different varieties of things like that, and every piece of clothing comes with a tag that explains the cultures behind the article of clothing. It is targeted towards mixed race children, but really it's there for anybody who wants to expose themselves to multiple cultures. She has an idea of each one teach one. For every person, every article of clothing that you get the information behind the clothing so that you can teach one person at least about that article of clothing and those cultures behind it. It's amazing. I am so inspired by Sonia, and I was very lucky to get a chance to speak with her through the multiple mixed race social media accounts. At some point, her team had followed Militantly Mixed, and I started stalking their page, and then I reached out to them and asked if I could get a chance to speak to somebody. But I am so glad that I got to talk to Sonia when I got to talk to her, because she was speaking to me at the time that I really needed somebody to talk about these types of things, about like going out there and being being an activist in your everyday life. She's created a company around her mixed race identity. She is also involved in MASK, which is an organization about multiracial Americans here in Southern California. She was a co-founder of the Mixed Heritage Day at Dodger Stadium here in Los Angeles. She is living her mixed ass life like nobody's business. And I am so glad she came on the show. And I don't want to run through her whole bio, even though I guess I kind of did there. But it was a great discussion. Even getting back to listen to it for editing, I was like doubly inspired. And I'm just, oh gosh, I'm so grateful that I got a chance to speak to her. And I'm grateful that you as an audience will get to listen to her as well and be inspired by her. All I can say before we jump into the episode is get out there and live your mixed ass life, or your monoracial ass life, whatever that is. But be in service to your culture, be in service to our people. From just hearing her voice, you can tell how inspired by her own work she gets to be. Like, it kind of reinforms and responsibilities, or whatever you want to call it, that passion to do things in relation to our mixed raceness. So I hope you can hear the excitement in my voice. I hope you enjoyed the episode. This is a very long intro. I apologize for that, but it was important for me to talk about the climate that we have here in the United States. But without further ado, let's get on with the show. Please welcome Sonia Smith-Kang of Mixed Up Clothing. All right, and so I am joined by Sonia Smith-Kang of Mixed Up Clothing and Mixed Heritage Day, MultiCulti Corner. We have a whole bunch to get into today, so thank you so much for joining me on Militantly Mixed. Why don't you take a few minutes to just kind of describe yourself, and let's get into it.
Perfect. Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited, and congratulations on your new podcast. I love it. I love being mixed. I talk about it every day. Tons of times a day. I really just feel like this is, everything that I've kind of been working on. We're at this place where we can talk about it as much as we do. And it started from a place that was pretty lonely. I identify as mixed. My father's African American. American. My mother is Mexican American. I'm a proud military brat that was born in Puerto Rico when my parents were stationed there. And then our family was transferred to the island of Oahu. So I spent part of my childhood on Oahu, Hawaii. And then we came to California, and I was this curly-haired, dark-skinned girl in the San Fernando Valley of Los Angeles in a world that looked completely opposite. It was this beautiful blonde, feathered hair, blue eyes, and that just wasn't me. And my sister and I joke now that we would ride a school bus for an hour from our home. This was part of the time where they had busing to get kids to and fro school. And by the time we got to school, our hair had shrunk to like 4 inches, and we just were not cute. We were not cute. And so I was constantly aware of how different I was, even at that young age. And then my mother put me in a middle school that was predominantly Latino, and my maiden name is Smith. So they were so confused, looking at me like, she looks like this and she sounds like this and her last name is Smith. So it was, it was a trying time. And so fast forward, I go to school, go to college, and I'm studying to be a registered nurse. I get a job where I am pretty much the cultural nurse on the floor, and which meant that I just ate it up. I wanted to know what people, where they were from, anything that would help them bring their culture, their religion, their into helping them get better, whether that was providing a prayer rug or turning their bed toward Mecca. Any of that just fascinated me, and I just loved it. And then I had my children. Let me back up. I got married, and my husband is Korean. So I was just living this life that was not only in my workplace, we talked about culture, but my children, I was living this intentional life where I was like, nothing in this house is going to be, I needed to look like my children and look like our family. I made sure the artwork, the food we were eating, the music we had on, it was just this, I'm sure I overdid it. I'm sure my kids are like, enough with it, But I was like, no, you guys are going to read books that look like you, characters that look like you. We're going to bring dolls in. And one of the things that I did was, because I had been sewing since I was a kid, or at least knew how to sew from, this was at the time where they taught sewing in school. And so I was like, I'm going to make you guys some clothes that, have some fabric from, that kind of come from our rich cultural heritage. And I'm going to turn them into fun little rompers and shorts and tops and dresses. And all of a sudden, people would stop me on the street and ask like, hey, where's that fabric from? And where did you get that? And I was like, well, I'm making it. And we would just stand there talking about what drew them to the clothes. So one, it was a conversation starter. Right. And two, it opened up this dialogue where they felt comfortable to share, where they were from and what they were hoping to get out of, our world. Right. And, as Oprah said, I had my little aha moment, and I was like, I'm going to start a business. Right. And I'm going to use the clothing as my vehicle to teach about culture and diversity and inclusion. And I took a leap of faith. I emptied out my 401k. I started taking business classes at our local small business association, and Mixed Up Clothing was born. And I haven't looked back.
That's awesome. So first of all, I love everything that you said, because that's just like the dream upbringing for a mixed race kid. So your children, not only are they Black and Mexican as you are, but you're married to a Korean man, and so your kids are half Korean and quarter Mexican, quarter Black. Is that correct?
Right.
So, I mean, already I'm on board, because I'm also a fellow Black mixed Asian, and there's not a whole lot of us, and we have an extreme amount of difficulty within our cultures. Koreans, Japanese, Chinese all seem to be very anti-mix in terms of the cultures themselves. And so then we come here and we're this big old melting pot in America, and we mix up, and to try to be able to like strongly identify with all of those cultures and still somehow try to piece together what you are and your identity. You're all over the place when you're a kid, and not to mention that you go through your identity crisis when you're going through your preteens anyway. Throw on there, hey, I don't look like other people. Just the idea that you set that up for your children so that their whole lives they were surrounded by people and things that reflected them back to them is just like, ugh, I'm mad jealous right now.
Right.
But I love that also converted into a way to get it out to other people, because I think that is the biggest part of sort of why I'm doing this as well. It's that like I was starved for it. I had a desert of mixedness, and this is a way for me to, build little oases so that I can rehydrate on my mixedness on a regular basis. So this is amazing. Right. I'm so excited to hear about this. And the fact that you took that big old leap, and that you're a woman in business and everything. Just, I'm totally geeking out right now.
Oh, thank you.
So let's talk about some of those early moments when people were, connecting to the clothing and asking you questions. What was that doing to you?
Yeah. So like you, I wanted to, it's one thing to kind of stay insular in your mixedness with folks that identify and they're like, yes, I get it. Mm-hmm. It's another thing to take it outside and have folks kind of learn from your experience, because, it's preaching to the choir versus beyond the choir, which is also my mission. Because my children are going to be out in the world with others. And so I want them to know that we are here. Right. So that was what was cool about the clothing, was that it was hitting this kind of way that was palatable to people. It wasn't like, oh, here, this woman is trying to preach to me about diversity. It was in this way that was digestible for them, and like, ooh, because I think when we tell a story, we connect, and folks start to see us, like, okay, I see that. I can see that. And that's who I also want to reach out to. I want them to know, one, that we're here, we've been here, and two, that there are some similarities between us, and that, we're not the scary boogeyman that might be in the back of their minds. So that's what I found with the clothes, that once we started listening to one another and our stories and our background and our culture, tradition, foods, it was, there were some similarities. Even in, there is something that I found learning from my husband that, that traces back to a Korean tradition that is very similar to the Latin tradition of Day of the Dead. And so we were able to connect the two and say, okay, I see that. And then, you start to break down some of the challenges, the bridges, that sometimes happen in between this fight for, folks want to be on top. There's this mad scramble for, this hierarchy that doesn't need to be there. So anyway, the clothes were this gentle way of just kind of talking about it and listening to one another. And I loved that.
Yeah, that's interesting that you would have a sort of a cultural similarity as a way to bridge that. That's not really something that has come up on the show yet. I just I'm kind of surprised by the thought of that. One of the things that comes up a lot to me is just that that thing that you get with another mixed person, where you try to describe something and they'll say, "Yeah, I'm like that too," even if you come from different backgrounds. And you're like, "See, we're actually not that different. We just happen to kind of look a little bit different, or whatever, or we have a little bit more cultural diversity. But ultimately, we all suffer some of the same things, and we all enjoy a lot of the same things. And so to be able to bridge a cultural gap with a holiday or something, that's amazing.
Right. Yeah.
What is that holiday called for the?
So I'm gonna mangle it, but it's actually that my kids are celebrating it today. It's Chilsuk. Yes. Yes.
I'm gonna look that up.
Look that up. And and it's great. They are wearing their hanboks today, which are their Korean cultural traditional outfit that they wear. So they are wearing that today. And so again, it goes back to this, paying homage to their ancestors, and they can leave, eat the foods and fruits and food and music of that time, which is also, again, with Day of the Dead or Dia de los Muertos. What you do is you can have a altar and have photos, and again have foods and listen to music that draws from your ancestors. And so it's beautiful. It's a beautiful way to kind of celebrate and share and, continue the traditions for your children as well. So, that's one of the things that I think is so great about this time, is that we have access to learning about one another that I think is important in not only raising children, but in, sharing what we have and where we're from. I actually make sure that my children, I take books with them, maybe the first week of school when I'm introducing myself to the teachers. I make sure that the books that are not only in my personal library here at home, I have copies that I give to the classroom, because again, it's that reaching outside of your home and preaching to outside of the choir, that we also need to kind of do our part. And I want the kids that they're in class with to have access to these books that they may not have otherwise, so that they say, "Oh, there's books with little brown children, and they have curly hair and texture and different body sizes. Look, get out." And
pushing representation in all areas.
Right. Yes. And I think that's important. I think that, to kind of do it for your home. I call it culture proofing our home, because we child proof our home. We make sure that, and we even started elder proofing our home, to make sure, to safeguard our elders and our children from harm. The same way we do with culture proofing is we're protecting their identity from the outside world, that may cause harm. So when I say I live an intentional life, I mean it. I make sure that, I am trying to heal that 11, 12-year-old girl who was needing this stuff when she was younger. And so I try to do that every day.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I've said several times on my show that I created the podcast I needed to hear, and just because it was this void in my life that I didn't have enough stories of other mixed race people, or I would stumble on a story that the focus wasn't that they were mixed race or multicultural or anything like that. You find out later on President Warren G. Harding was actually black or part black, and things like that. And you're like, well, how further would we have been if at that time he had been elected and we found out then? Would it have been bad for him? Would we have advanced civil rights earlier? Things like that.
Right.
So trying to piece together a history of other mixed race people just for my own, education, or feeling like I have a connection to, that we didn't just start in the 70s, basically, I mean, because in my case, I'm born 10 years after Loving versus Virginia. And both of my parents were mixed race, but they were mixed race sort of sanctioned because they were also military. So I had a white grandfather bring a Japanese bride from Japan during the Korean War, and then I had a black grandfather that brought a British Caucasian bride to America during also the same time. So they were like, you know, it was the 50s and the late 50s and the early 60s, but they were like sanctioned because the military was kind of giving a solid to their troops or whatever. But in other parts of the country, this was illegal. They weren't allowed to exist. And so I feel very affected by the fact that it's only legal for 10 years before I come around.
Right.
And so by the time I become a teenager, obviously people it hasn't cycled through a full generation yet of people being accepting of interracial couples and interracial children and things like that. And once we get to 2018, we're still saying, why aren't there people that look like us on TV? Or, you know, like, why aren't there books that our kids can pick up that they can see? Or, I mean, I find myself crying when I see a video on Facebook because someone made a black doll that looks like a Barbie, you know, and you're just like, this little girl is squealing because she has a doll that looks like her. And I was like, I wanted that, you know. You find yourself doing that. So having that intention with your own children, I just I mean, like I said, I'm a little jealous, but I'm also like absolutely excited that is happening for them. And, you know, they'll have different problems, but maybe one of those problems won't be the racial identity crisis that a lot of us go through. So that's amazing. In terms of your clothing line, though, is it sort of physical patterns of the fabric, or is it like you'll maybe make an Asian style outfit, but you'll maybe have an African style print? Like how exactly are you telling a story through the clothes for the people who haven't heard of you yet? Yeah.
So to just put it, so I source fabric from all over the world, and then I turn them. So the mixed up clothing is about mixing and matching different fabric, different styles. So for instance, I'm looking at my collection right in front of me, and there's one where I sourced fabric from like Hawaii, and it has, you know, palm trees on it and pineapples. And so it's just a flouncy kind of twirly skirt. And what it does is the hang tag has a story, and it tells about, you know, Hawaii and the different foods. Sweet. And so it gives a little lesson, if you will, on the hang tag, so that you can learn while you're wearing, and so that if anybody stops you and says, hey, what is that, you know, fabric from? Or, you know, well, this is, you know, from Hawaii, and it has this, and this was reflective of this. And so I want to continue, like, each one teach one. So that's the clothes. And again, it's just we could have a kimono style in the design, but it could be fabric sourced from Mexico. It can be let's see, I'm looking at a kente kind of cloth that is turned into a fun poncho that's reversible. So, I mean, there's different things. I encourage folks to take a look at the website and, you know, learn for themselves all the different things that we do at Mixed Up Clothing. Yeah,
I'm not going to lie. I'm super excited because I've always wanted to find out where in Africa my ancestors, you know, were stolen from. And we recently did get our results. And so there was my journey through DNA to kind of piece myself back to Africa, because before that I never felt I could claim African American, because so many generations, who knows, you know, I don't know if they filtered through the Caribbean and then came to the America, right? You know, all that kind of stuff. Well, we finally found out through DNA with AfricanAncestry.com, and our results were from Gabon, 3 different tribes in Gabon, and we got 100% confidence. So, like, we know, according to the other DNA samples, that we have 3 tribes in Africa that our ancestors originate from. And I was like, if I could find some fabric from, you know, once I do some more exploration and learning about the culture, if I found some fabric that was reminiscent of those tribes that my ancestors would come from, and then pair it with a kimono, right? Like, that would be something that would be really reflective of who I am and what I feel. And to hear that you're already actually kind of doing something like that. For it's like, oh, so it's not a weird thing that I just have this, right. And also wondering about appropriation and all that other kind of stuff. But really, for those of us that are mixed, how to make us feel connected to one solid thing, that would be a way. Joining all of our different heritages into one item would be amazing.
It is, and it's it is I do think that it's what you feel comfortable. Growing up, my cousins danced in something called ballet folklorico, which is a very traditional Mexican form of dance. And it didn't feel, I didn't feel comfortable on that end. And then, growing up and going to college, whether it was joining the Black Student Union or the other affinity groups, I didn't necessarily find my place at that time. Right. So, and I know that clothing is such a big part of identity, as is hair. And I do understand the idea of, can I wear this? But it's something that, I think we need to unpack as those that are mixed.
Really? Yeah.
Because, that it's hard. It's hard, and it's something that needs to be discussed within ourselves. How do can you wear this and feel like it fully reflects who you are, or can I just combine a few things and make it mine? And I think that's where I'm at. And that's kind of what I lean at. And so, there's a lot that happens, I think, with clothing and other things.
And that's actually an area we haven't really talked about. We have talked a little bit with other people about, how food was the thing that really majorly bonded them to different cultures because their families would be around and everything like that. And so they might not be able to live a mixed life out in the world, but at home they got to be, whatever. If they didn't look like the culture they were celebrating, they at least felt safe at home. So we've talked about that before. We've talked about hair before, but we really haven't talked about how clothing could make a person feel a little bit more safe or represented in terms of, their presentation to the world. I mean, I know there's times that even although I do identify more as Black and Japanese than anything else, if I'm wearing a shirt that looks, too Japanese, I wonder, are they going to think I'm just one of these otakus, which is like a white fan of Japanese culture, or like an American fan of Japanese culture? Or, if I wear like an Africa, Black and I'm Proud type of t-shirt, and then someone's like, well, you don't look Black,
I get it.
You feel like, I get it. What can I do to piece that together? And that's what you're doing. You're doing
that. And that's what I'm doing. And that's what, it's I think clothing is a huge part of our identity. And from as simple as I have printed t-shirts that say hello in different languages. Yeah. Having that in mainstream, an opportunity to have a t-shirt that says hola or, shalom or whatever, that's the part that I think is my, next step is to get into big retail. To go into a Target store and have a piece of clothing that I could buy, and that that a big brand is saying, I see you. Yeah. Multicultural, multiracial families and individuals, I see you. Let us give something that honors that. Right. In a genuine way. And from a place of authenticity, and a place that is, so yes, it does. It will take some time because I know, that, the fine line between appropriation and appreciation. But that's again where they bring in this diverse team, right? They take, they called me and they're like, hey, we need your help. We know that there's a need. How can you help us tell this story? And so those are the kind of things that I feel needs to happen. How many times have you seen on television, whether it's a commercial or, ads that pop up? I think Old Navy just had an ad that has an interracial couple with some mixed race children on their cover. And I was like, I don't care what this mix is. I see it.
And you're excited.
And you're excited.
I know.
And we put it up everywhere. We shout them out. And it is just, I think sometimes, Fifth Avenue and all the those that do the brands and, try to make commercials for us, they don't really necessarily get it.
Right.
And so I think they get monoracial.
Sure.
Like they're figuring that out, right?
Yeah.
But they're trying to figure out, like, do I need to do all the different mixes that there are possible,
Right.
And so I think that's the piece where they still need work. They still need they need the numbers. For instance, Nielsen does not have the numbers that back up, the mixed race population. I think that's why the census is so important, to get some numbers, because that's what they need. They need to see our numbers.
The unfortunate side of being in this early stage of people understanding mixedness or figuring out that we even exist is, we're still in the, well, pick one or pick the one you look the most like zone, because that's something that at least monoracial people can kind of get behind. Like, all right, you're mixed, okay, but you kind of look XYZ, right. Why don't you just focus there and, we'll get there. We'll get to you eventually. But getting a chat, but like you said, you see an ad for Old Navy. I mean, when the Cheerios ad from a couple years popped up, I was so excited. And I'm not half black and half white. I'm different, but just to see mixed raceness, it's even gotten to the point that after 18 years, my husband is starting to identify, interracial and mixed race families for me on the streets, because it used to be like punch buggy for me, where I'd be like, oh, look at that little mixed girl, or oh, she's such and such, or and he's like, why do you always notice it? And I'm like, because it's what I think about. It's what I literally talk about every day of my life.
Right.
And so now it's filtered to him, where he's just like, he knows that this is something that brings me joy, seeing other mixed people in the world.
That's
and
right.
I don't care. Like, I am in that zone right now where I don't care what your mix is. I care that you're mixed, and then I gravitate towards you, and I'll learn about what your stuff is and talk about what my stuff is. And between there, we'll find differences that are awesome and I want to know more about, and similarities that are like, oh, you do this too? Thank goodness there's someone else in the world like us. I think that is really what our sort of activism through our mixedness adds to the conversation. It's the same, like I've said before about President Obama. I never refer to him as the first black president. I refer to him as the first African American president, because he's literally African and American. And so that title makes sense to me. But when someone says the first black, I'm like, don't erase that he is actually mixed. And while yes, whiteness is more prominent than anything else, to erase his whiteness is to erase the person who actually raised him versus the color of his skin, who is from his father but doesn't necessarily reflect how he was raised.
Right.
And so I think that's the important part of our mixed race activism, whether it's through food or podcasts or clothing or organizations, things like that. That's what we're out here trying to do, is get a seat at the table.
That's
be
right.
a part of the conversation.
That's right.
So all these different organizations or businesses that you are a part of, I did want to talk about the Mixed Heritage Day that you have. Is that exclusive here in LA, the Dodger Stadium, or is that something that is filtering out?
Right. So it started here in Los Angeles. I'm co-founder of Mixed Heritage Day. So again, it's exactly what you did, where you noticed that there was a need for a community, and you were like, I'm not waiting for someone to build this. I'm going to go ahead and make a podcast and do it, right? The same way with me, with the clothing. And it's it's creating the space that you needed, right? And Absolutely. So like I do that with Mixed Up Clothing. I did that. I co-founded the Mixed Heritage Day and MultiCulti Corner with the same person, Delia Douglas, which is right now based in Los Angeles, because that's where we are. And the two groups are kind of stem from one, and they go from one another. We introduce families to different cultures here. We're so lucky in Los Angeles to have all these different ethnic enclaves that we're able to introduce families and children and individuals to all those different cultures. Again, it's to introduce them and to kind of take away away the for whatever reason that they haven't learned about another culture, because that is step one, is learning about one another. Mm-hmm. And the other part, which is Mixed Heritage Day, is saying we need to get together. There was a time at Dodger Stadium where my family and I were there, and it happened to be, I think it was Filipino night. And, we were there, and my son at the time, he was like, is there a night for kids that are mixed or families that are mixed? And I was like, they're going to be
There's going to be. That's right.
And the next day, I don't even know if I waited the next day. I think I got on my phone and I was looking up, different, how do I get in touch with the Dodgers and figure out a way, they had, Japan night, Cuban Heritage night. They had all these wonderful monoracial heritage nights, which is wonderful. Yeah. But again, it's asking the question, what about us? And everything that I do, I ask the question, what about us? What about our mixed folks? Or what about that community, which is one of the fastest growing populations. So you cannot sleep on our community. So I have my facts. I have my statistics. I got all my numbers. I put it together in this pretty little package. I sent it over to the Dodgers with the help again of Delia. And we were like, we need this day. And so last year was our second year. It grows each year. And we had, some, the little guy from Blackish, he threw out the first pitch for us. He's mixed. And we had...
the younger brother is?
Yes, Miles is his real name.
That. I knew Yara was, but I didn't realize that he was
Yeah, he is mixed. And he's Black and Latin. And so we had him throw out the first pitch, and, we had the support of Yasiel Puig, and the manager is also Japanese Black. That's Dave Roberts. He's the manager for the Dodgers. So, I mean, this is all I put into my my kit that I sent over to them. And I was like, look, even on your team, you have an interracial marriage. You got, I have this guy and you got this guy who represents our community, but yet you do not have you got Hello Kitty night. You know what I mean? Like, you can have a space for us. And they did. They were like, yes, we see it. Thank you. And so we are branching out. We are looking for other stadiums who want to do the same, different sports. So we are looking at basketball next. We're looking at San Diego for their baseball team. So it is just a gathering of folks that grow each year that says, look at us. Here's a day of community. And it's beautiful.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's just really triggered from, look at that. You said it was triggered from your own child, right? So
right.
It's just clearly something even at that young of an age is absent and missing, and playing into it, or, trying to fulfill those gaps early. I mean, imagine the impact, or what kind of, little mixed race powerhouses they're going to be when they get older. That's exciting.
Yeah, no, that is my goal, right? I truly believe in it. If you can see it, you can be it. And I think the same way your husband points out, different mixed families, or, I do the same thing. I'm like, look, look at even on the Golden State Warriors, they have different players of, Stephen Curry and, the whole thing. I'm like, look.
Yeah.
And I think there needs to be more talk about that. And there needs to be more, representation and celebration and around that for not just, folks like you and I, but for the next generations that are coming up, that are waiting for us to put in that we're doing the work for them. And I think that's what's really amazing. And I do not like to hear people downplay the work that they're doing, because it is really brave and courageous to start something that is new and different. But in the bigger picture, there's a child that is waiting to hear it, and which is part of what I do. And we all wear different hats, and I put on my little fashionista hat and my community activist hat, and I also wear the hat of being a president of a 501c3 here in Southern California called MASC, or Multiracial Americans of Southern California. We have been around for almost 30 years, and it was started by two parents, two moms who, again, found an affinity toward one another because of their shared experience. And this was pre-Facebook, all the social media stuff that we have. And they wanted a place for their children and to share and to talk about whether or not the mix was the same. It didn't matter. They just wanted to have a community that talked about these things. So here we are almost 30 years later, and I'm fortunate enough to be part of the organization that was actually part responsible for getting that check the more than one box on the U.S. Census. And so we're really proud of that. I cannot believe it was, it could have just been like yesterday that this was an option for us, because prior to this time, as you know, we had to be check one, and even school forms haven't caught up to, the regulations that have been sent forth by, our governing agencies that need. So
I heard that recently, and I was shocked because by the time I was in high school, it was still check one box. I actually got in trouble for checking multiple boxes because I was trying to be an activist.
You got to.
But I was listening to someone else's podcast, another young mixed race podcast that's out. It's only a couple weeks old. And she said it because she was probably 20 years younger than me. And she was saying, I had to decide, and I didn't want to ignore my family. And I was like, what year is this? How is it possible that that's still happening? I didn't know who to credit for being able to check multiple boxes now. So that's awesome that it was meant.
Yes. Well, we were part of it. So, we're very excited to be part of all the folks that went to testify and to get all this, done. So that it could be better, but it's still, there are still times when the forms do come back, and you'll see them, whether it's in healthcare or education, any of these forms, whether online or otherwise paper, they are still, my kids will come back and say, what do I put down? And I'm like, oh no, we are adding a box, we are, so it is still
and
there.
Stop with the other. I know I'm not saying it as often anymore as I used to, but I remember being like 25 or something going like, I'm not an other. Like, I'm just me. Like, I'm just a Black, Japanese, white person. Why do I have to say that I'm an other?
Right.
What would that even mean?
Yes. And that's the work that we're trying to do. We're trying to educate as well as advocate, and we're activists, trying to change what they may see as simple or is really hurtful and harmful to those on the receiving end of that. And if we could just, continue to work together, and I know that that's what MASC is doing behind the scenes, and I'm proud to be part of that, and I'm proud to, I love that you are, militantly mixed. I love that because any day I will just be fighting and for the change. And I'm happy to join you in this crusade of changing how, the narrative.
Yeah, right. And that's really what it is. It boils down to is there's things about mixedness that is absolutely positive, and there's things about the perception of mixedness that is absolutely negative. negative that I hope that in my lifetime we do get to see, shook off. Part of it is the idea that mixed race people are going to end racism, because eventually we'll all be the same thing. And, I don't think that that's going to happen. I don't think it's really the burden of the mixed race person to end racism. But I do think that we, at the same time, have to be the ones that are out there probably with as loud as voices as possible to get people to pay attention to how intersectional people are. Even a monoracial person is a, mixed upness of whatever their things are. You could be Anglo, but you're like 15 types of Anglo, there, everybody has some sort of mix, whether or not they're aware of it or identify with it. But it is our jobs to, put our faces and our bodies out there, to get people to pay attention to our humanity and not think of us as sort of like the diluted version of what may be an enemy. So that's something that I think hasn't really come up too much on the show yet, but hopefully it will eventually. The idea that like I'm not so black as to be dangerous, so I'm more acceptable, more palatable because I'm mixed. And I think that is something that actually does happen to mixed race people that is just as negative as just outright anti any group or whatever. I did not know about Mask until I connected with your team. So, which makes me sad because I'm sitting here Googling stuff all the time. I don't know how I've managed to miss it, but knowing that exists and that it's out there, it makes me, happy that it's 30 years old, that they are part of the reason why I don't have to check another box or make my own box. Contributing to that makes me really happy, and I'll probably try to get myself involved once I get on the website here. But since we are coming near the end of our time together, one question I really want to ask, and I got to give credit to another podcast because I'm totally stealing this idea, and I told him I was going to steal it, but there's a podcast out there called While Black, and it's about just life in general, living every aspect of life while black. And one of the things that they do is ask people what they love about being black. And when I started to listen to their podcast, it hit me. I was like, you know what? We haven't done that yet on our show. We get into some of the ugly things or the painful things. Sometimes we get into the positive things too, because that could be somebody's experience. But, there's a lot of times when you can't avoid sort of the negative things that happen to us because of our differences from the mainstream. So far, I've only heard positive things coming from our discussion. Everything that you're out there doing for mixed race people and your activism is amazing. But specifically, what do you love about being mixed?
Oh, I love that question. I love that I have the opportunity to meet more folks that are. I have this ability to just have I guess the experience to talk with more folks. And I love that I can bond on more levels with, different cultures, just based on the fact that that lived experience of all, like I said, the African American culture, the Mexican American culture. I have, the Afro-Caribbean in Puerto Rico, and then the Pacific Islander of being in Hawaii. I have all that. And now added to that, my husband and learning about his culture. But being mixed is this opening to more people that I love learning about, and it made it easy for me to meet new people. I'm not as afraid of others as maybe my neighbor would be if they didn't have my same experience or same mixedness. So I get to the opportunity to meet more folks, and I love that.
That's awesome. Yeah, that makes me feel all warm inside. It is feels like you have all these strings that connect you to people all over the world, and all you have to do is tug on it so you can talk to that person a little bit, and that's a beautiful part of being mixed. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show with me and talk about all the different aspects of your business and your activism and everything. I feel really lucky to have connected with your team and everything to so that I get a chance to talk to you. Why don't we tell everybody how all the different ways they can find all the different things that you're doing?
Oh boy, yes, and I would love to, and thank you again for having me. And I feel just honored to be a guest, and I wish you continued success. You can find Mixed Up Clothing at Mixed Up Clothing on all our social media channels, and you can find our website www.mixedupclothing.com. MultiCulti Corner is another one of, I co-founded. Mixed Heritage Day. All of that you could find on social media with that handle. And Mask is also, we put on panels we have one coming up. It's through Color Conversation. It's talking to HAPA children. So look for that. I encourage folks to go to www.masksite.org, MASCSITE.org, or just Google us. Here to support. Ask me anything. Open book.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
This has been amazing. Yeah, so we'll get all of your social media handles and websites and everything in our show notes, and hopefully everybody will keep in touch. I also noticed that you're on you have Facebook groups and everything for all of those things, so people can join and engage in the conversation that way as well. All right, great. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Militantly Mixed is a ManeHustle Media podcast, produced and hosted by me, Sharmane Johnson. Music is by David Bogan, The One. And if you like what you heard on Militantly Mixed, please subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes and wherever you find your podcasts. ManeHustle Media. Turn your side hustle into your main hustle.